So how does it feel, Glasgow to Noida, 41 Celsius?
A bit of a transition. It was a little colder when I left Glasgow. It's nice and sunny here, but it's been great to meet the startups here in Noida, coming from the UK and seeing the differences and, more importantly, the similarities.
Yes, it's been quite a journey, I think, for you.
Yep.
5 years, 13 centres and about, what, 650 companies through?
At the moment, we're working with about 650 to date, but yeah, we've worked with quite a few over the years, which is interesting and gives you a lot of insight and learning on that journey.
In some of the learning you've had in this journey?
So initially, when we started out, we were a sort of year-long program, and I think for us it was about saying, right, okay, the psychology of accelerating people and moving them along means that you probably need to shorten that period of time so that when they come in, they realise that they've actually got quite a short period to make something happen. So we initially went from a year-long program to a 6-month program. So that was kind of a big learning for us that we learned over the first year as we opened our 3 accelerators. You learn that entrepreneurs have very similar challenges along the way, so you can recognise quite quickly something that's happening with one entrepreneur that you've seen before with another. And obviously you build a great network. So for us it's been about making sure that we have the network that we can plug the entrepreneurs into at the right time. So it's been, for us, we're a startup. We started 4.5 years ago, so we've had our own roller coaster of a ride, and I think we're the role model as well for the startups that are coming through, and we're always learning, and we always learn from, okay, that maybe didn't work, so now we'll try something different, and we're not afraid to say that. We're not set in stone. That would be crazy. So we're always changing as well, so it's important to do that.
Lovely. So tell me, especially given the current flavour nowadays all about funding,
Yeah.
what should an entrepreneur be looking for at an accelerator centre besides funding, of course?
So funding's really important. That's an important part of starting a business. However, there's no point pouring loads of cash into something if you've not worked out whether there's an actual market for your business or your service or your product. So really it's about that kind of validation. So for me, an accelerator is the accountability and taking you through the steps that you need to validate your business or scale it up depending on what stage you're at. So it's the support and challenge that you get in the space that is really, really important. I think we know as human beings, if you say, right, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and you know that somebody's going to come back to you in a week or 10 days and say, have you done it? Then you're much more likely to have moved that on. The other big thing that Accelerator brings is being able to join up the dots, as we call it. So essentially bringing all the elements and the contacts and the networks and the introductions and the mentors that you wouldn't have access to if you were sitting at home on your own. So that's a really important part of it, because that's the things that money can't buy. An introduction to somebody that could be your next big customer, will make the difference, meaning that you don't need that funding, The third thing really is around the kind of collaboration. So being in a space with like-minded people. We always joke in accelerators at home that your mum and dad or your family and friends think you're crazy. Why would you want to start a business, and be an entrepreneur and work all those hours? So being in a space with people who are on the same journey is really important, because they know what the highs and lows are like, and they support you through that, as does the team at the accelerators. An accelerator, the team there, entrepreneurs are their business. They are there for you and to help you grow. So you're not going to find a better environment with a team that are 100% supporting you and there to help you succeed and want to see you succeed in any other way, shape or form that anybody else would. A lot of other people might have reasons, might have ulterior motives, but that team are there to help you make it happen. So I think the benefits of being an accelerator are just phenomenal over and above funding.
Sure. Yes, you're absolutely right. It is a comprehensive package. You just can't look at only the funding.
Yep, exactly.
But tell me one thing, you obviously meet a lot of entrepreneurs who come into you, but naturally each entrepreneur is quite close to his idea or her idea.
Yes.
And they believe that's the best thing, which they could have done.
Yep.
But in your view, what is really a great idea?
What is a great idea? So ultimately, anybody can come up with an idea. We could sit here right now and we could come up with 10 different ideas. the difference between making that idea a reality comes down to the entrepreneur. So do you have the ability to execute and work out whether anybody wants that product or service? And then if they do, great, okay, how are you going to scale that business? So the idea is kind of secondary. It's about the entrepreneur being able to go out and validate it and then grow that business. A lot of people will, we see come into the Accelerator, will come in with one idea and then realize that maybe that's not going to happen. So we say, well, what is your passion? What are you passionate about? We have a good example of a company in Edinburgh. A guy came in and he had an idea, and we knew at the time it was probably going to be as what we term an ugly baby. But you're not going to tell somebody that. You have to help them come to the realization. And he came to the realization quite quickly that this wasn't going to fly, this idea. So we said to him, what is your passion? What are you passionate about? And he said, I'm passionate about craft beer. So we said, okay, great, young guy. He went away and researched it and came back and said, right, okay, I'm going to start a craft beer club. So essentially you subscribe monthly and you get 8 bottles of beer sent to your house. He's now valued at £10 million 3 years down the line. So I think it was our belief in him as an individual that was the most important thing. Sure. And we knew if we brought him in, he would make something special happen. And I think that's, an idea is fine, but it's about, can you make it actually a reality?
Sure.
That's the most important bit. So good idea, good entrepreneur is what you're looking for.
Sure. But, given that you're talking about this whole piece about passion and the more softer sides as well to business, do you believe that the culture of a startup also actually kind of has an impact on the success?
Oh yeah, phenomenally. I think culture can make or break a business, and it's what that entrepreneur breeds in his team, who he brings on, and how he runs that company that will make it either successful or not. So building the right culture, we talk about an entrepreneurial spark as everybody in the canoe and where we all rowing in the same direction. And that's really, really important. So we're all very clear about our vision, we're clear about the culture of our organisation, and we're all moving in the same direction because we all believe in that vision and we all want to be there because we really understand the difference that we're making. So to create the right culture means that you're hiring the right talent who believe in the same things that you do and want to be part of that. So making sure that people understand that and feel that they're part of it. So it's really important to make sure that people feel that they've fed into that culture and they can express themselves in the right ways. Because in a startup, you've got to attract people in when maybe you don't have the best benefits, maybe you don't have, the things that they might get from a corporate lifestyle, but there's lots of exciting and really interesting things that they can get, and the benefits could be immense long term. So it's making sure that they want to come in and work in that environment that's really important. So as a leader, you need to set the right culture and the right tone, particularly if you want to build a big brand. We talked earlier about, essentially people buying into a brand and a story and they want something to have a personality.
Sure.
So that's all about the culture you're breeding and the personality that you're externally showing to people, and that's really important.
Lovely. But tell me, in all this, when an entrepreneur is kind of busy doing lots of things all over and trying to manage lots of balls, very often what happens is that he discovers that somebody else has come up with an idea quite similar to his. And the rate at which things are proliferating now, it happens quite often. How do you manage that, and how does he manage or she manage that?
Yeah, it will come down to, again, it's my favourite word is execution, and it's about how effectively and quickly you're able to take your product or service to market. Some of the best businesses are people saying, I could do that a lot better than they're doing it. We've seen that all the time. We had the CEO of Skyscanner in, and he said, there was already lots of people in the market doing what we do at Skyscanner, but we knew we could do it better. And look where they are now, 14 years down the line in terms of a global business. So it's also about saying, right, I can execute on this business. I can bring in the right funding. There's a lot of companies right now that are land grabbing. So can you compete with that?
Yep.
So it's weighing up all the pros and cons in terms of the situation that you're in and your ability to move quickly and execute effectively.
Yeah, so all about speed as well, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So so can you move? But in a way that attracts people. So there's a lot of people that can move quickly, but actually along the way they've not taken people on that journey with them. So it's making that point.
But tell me, in your experience that you've been working with entrepreneurs in the UK, and some of those that you have interacted with here, are there stuff you find which is common, something which is different?
Oh, yeah, I think, it's been interesting in the UK as we've opened. UK is much smaller than India, obviously, but there's differences between cities. However, what we've noticed is we've gone from moving from Glasgow to going sort of 400 or 500 miles south. You will see exactly the same companies and ideas and people walking in, through the door. So we can have 3 people interviewing to come into the Accelerator with exactly the same idea. So I think essentially there's a lot of similarities in terms of the types of ideas that people are coming up with. We have a lot of companies now, your likes of Uber and your Airbnbs, that are disrupting the market. So I think a lot of people are thinking, well, what's next? What can I do in these different areas? So massive similarities that we see across the board. In terms of what it boils down to is the mindset of the entrepreneur. So we talk about that all the time because it's the most important thing, and you see exactly the same here. We've had interactions with people who are very coachable, want to listen, take feedback, and you can speak to people who are a bit more prickly and a bit more difficult to deal with, and you really have to be open to feedback and people challenging you. And they're only, and as I said at the beginning, they're only doing that for your own good. They're not trying to be divisive. They're not trying to burst your bubble. They're just trying to help you see, what's the next step? Where do you need to go now? So yeah, I think there's huge similarities. I haven't seen anything different in the time that we spent with the entrepreneurs here in India that we haven't seen in the UK.
That's wonderful. Tell me one thing, you mentioned about lots of similar ideas coming through the door, and how do you manage, so to speak, client confidentiality and manage that? Because you could potentially have similar thought processes on the plan, sitting in 2 different centers or even the same center. Yep.
So we never bring in direct competition into one location, but we will bring it in different locations, and essentially they're working with different teams. So unless they chose to meet up or collaborate or work together, then really they would be dealt with separately. So there would never really be that crossover, and the team's very conscious of that. They would never talk about each other's ideas between the 2 centres. So we are very mindful of confidentiality, albeit we're not too keen when people come in and say, well, you sign an NDA and this is all very private, because it's not going to get you anywhere. You need to talk about your idea. You need to put it out there. You're going to have to validate it. Unless you're, have a patent that you can't talk about, then get out there and speak to as many people as you possibly can. Squirreling it away is going to do you no good at all.
But on the flip side, for instance, there is obviously a cohort of entrepreneurs sitting in centers with similar mindsets of sorts. Are there opportunities for them to work with each other which might be complementary or
Very much so, yeah. So one of the things we're now doing as we come to sort of opening all of our centres is how do we network across all of them, and how do we share the ideas. So we use the kind of internal platforms at the moment, and different things for them to communicate between each other. But what we're now seeing is people actually travelling to different locations, so making sure that our teams are aware of the similarities or the potential collaborations across centres, and saying, right, okay, you need to go up to Edinburgh, or you need to go down to Brighton and visit such and such. And we see that happening more and more now. And I think the beauty of the partnership we have here in India is that we will start to do that across continents. So we will be able to say, right, okay, who is it you can link in with in India, and vice versa. And if people want to travel, they'd want to do business in India, then they can come and base themselves here. And likewise, the Indian companies from the accelerators here can come over and base themselves in the UK. It's a great potential for cross collaboration.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem at all. Lovely talking to you.
Wonderful having you here.
Thank you.
Thanks.